And first. So we're going to go ahead and get started. There may be some others still joining us, but I want to be mindful of everyone's time today. And, want to be able to provide plenty of time for questions throughout the day. So, feel free to jump into the chat and throw any questions you have in there. If there's something that's, I think, Peter, we're fine with questions as we're going. So if people have burning questions and you just want to pop off mute and give a shout, we're happy to make this informal and do that as well.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to spend a little bit of time today as kind of a follow-up to the conversation we had I guess now almost a couple months ago regarding some of the conversations we've been having with Peter and his group. So why don't we do this? Why don't we just do real fast introductions for everybody, just so again, we all have a sense of who's in the room. And so I'll just call out people and go from there. And we'll, I'm going to start with David because you're first on my list, even though you just introduced yourself. But now since we're officially on record, I'll have you do it again. So.
Okay, fine. My name is David Bourne. I'm actually a member of the Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon, and I'm now the Associate Director of MFI and the Director of Education in MFI. So that's the Manufacturing Futures Institute.
Sylvia?
Hi, I'm Sylvia El Sayed. I'm with CCAC, and I work in the Workforce Division. We provide customized training to many manufacturers, and we also have an industrial manufacturing technician apprenticeship, and we're going to be starting our mechatronics apprenticeship in November for the first time. So we're excited about that.
Carol.
Carol Wooten, lead consultant for Schools That Can Pittsburgh. We are into career readiness and career skills. We're in Newark, Chicago, New York City, and Pittsburgh.
Amber.
Hello, I'm Amber Epps. I'm the Executive Director at Protohaven. We're a nonprofit community makerspace and design and fabrication school in Wilkinsburg.
Let's see, India.
She said she had to step away for a minute, so she might not be in front of a computer. But since I'm off mute, I'm Nate Broadus, Catalyst Connection. I'm a workforce specialist. I believe I've met everybody on the call before.
Hannah.
Hi, everyone. Hannah Kasenko from Catalyst Connection. I'm a part of the workforce development team and excited to be here.
Maura.
Hi, my name is Mara Bainbridge. I work at Industrial Arts Workshop.
Great. And Tim.
Hi, everybody. I also work at Industrial Arts Workshop as the ED. Happy to be here and hear the conversation. In short, we teach high school kids how to weld through an arts practice and interested in any partnership opportunities.
And just for Peter's benefit, Tim is about 3 blocks away from us or so in our community here in Hazelwood. And we've partnered up on a bunch of stuff over time, including training as part of strategic planning trainings with some of our manufacturers, all the way down to youth welding programs. So I think there's some great synergies in those activities. So I think I've hit everybody. I don't see anybody additionally. Again, I'll just ask if everybody can mute unless you're coming off for a question, that'd be great. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Peter. And Peter, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company, and then we'll dive right into the manufacturing component.
Okay. Well, thank you, Scott, and thank you all for being here and for taking time out of a busy Monday. My name is Peter Lepore. I'm a partner in Scarole Enterprises, and we are basically a three pillar. We have 3 pillars of our company and our direction. One of them is what we spent, for those of you on the call, met with us a couple of months ago. We have been using esports as a vehicle to be able to deliver engagement and education, not only certainly through the school age, but we're seeing that sort of filter into the space, into workforce development, and not only people who are trying to get ready for a new career, but also even into the corporate space now, where we're using different types of esports to be able to enhance that. Mostly around that space, we'll call it gamification, is what most people would recognize that term when we talk to them. We also work in the workforce space for that, and workforce development, working here with the SUNY system. I have to be in New York. We're based in Miami, but work with the SUNY system and their workforce development, along with different apprenticeships, to look to find different ways to shorten the time, certify, and get people frankly ready faster. And then the final piece is what we'll call the corporate training, is the best way to describe it. And that corporate training is the typical what you'd expect: identifying performance and the metrics, figuring a way in which to get people to be able to perform faster, better, and with more relevant and technology examples. I'm going to just say two things. I want to give you a quick example before we begin. The first thing is, while there are three pillars, those have been continuously blurring as we've started this just now, only for the last maybe 18 months, what seemed to be very clear delineations, they're not there anymore. Matter of fact, you can actually trace sort of a golden thread all the way from, kids who are in middle school, trying to identify what's interesting to them and to engage, but also to get their skill level in a way that they're prepared before they make that important decision. Do I go into the workforce, or do I go to pursue higher education? No matter what choice they make, whether it's, by the way, delaying higher education for a bit, or whether it's going right in, these things are all that preparation is critically important for them, and showing them that those opportunities exist. And then this is the thing that was for someone who's worked in that space for the last 25 years, the biggest eye opener, and what I hear most when I talk to different people in the corporate space, is we need people who are more ready than they are now. And that might sound a little bit like, are you sure? What do they mean by that? How many times their expectation of what the skills, competencies are coming in, and ability to apply them, don't always exactly line up with what they need. They feel like it's a relevance issue, but I don't think it is. I think it's a communication issue in a way in which those spaces, if they come closer together, all of a sudden what they're finding is we'll find that those that people now walk in, they're already going at 30 miles an hour through whether they've gone through a workforce program or whether they went to college, and then they're able to the corporate space can help them to move more quickly into whatever their career is, and be more transportable across careers as well, because that's the other thing is, I'm telling you already know, but how many of us started in this space? Some started, you knew what you wanted and you followed a straight path, but some don't. And can I share with you just a personal story? Do you mind about this? I'm going to give you three people that I know pretty well, and see if you can relate to one of these three people. One of them, wasn't sure what they wanted to do as they entered graduation near high school, and probably would have taken a civil service job because didn't know what else to do, except happened to have some athletic ability, ended up going to school on an athletic scholarship for a bit, continued educating, and then ended up in a consulting space and did pretty well. Another had an aptitude went to a BOCES school, which is in New York. That is the vocational school. Showed an aptitude for electricity. Got hired by a major company by the time they were 18. By the time they were 21, they were an industrial electrician, doing pretty well. Followed that for 8 years, and then ended up having one of his employers go back to school. Ended up with a master's in divinity and a co-MBA, and now is a successful business consultant. The third hated school, was never engaged, couldn't find any redeeming quality, thought maybe I'll just be a rock star. Got a job at Wendy's after dropping out of school at 16, showed an aptitude for food preparation, got befriended and championed by someone in their hometown, ended up going to New York, what they call staging at different places, ended up a James Beard certified and an award-winning chef and doing very well. Those are three different stories. And I don't know if you know people like that, or maybe it's one of you. I can tell you who feels the dumbest, and I will tell you, I was one of those people. I'm the one who ended up going to school, getting some debt, but also kind of went through and followed the traditional path. The electrician was my brother. I have a younger brother who, smart enough, but ended up doing that. And that path ended up being very good for him. And my cousin, well, he's now a chef in Chicago and written several cookbooks, but he wasn't engaged in school, but work engaged him. So what we're finding with the blending of this is it just takes, there are so many different paths, and I don't know if everybody knows those paths. I don't know if the kids graduate now. I know you guys are all doing great work to do that, but do they know all that's there for them? What we want to be able to do with some of what we're creating, especially around the virtual space, and we'll be talking more about VR, augmented, or we call extended reality today, is to give people the opportunity to experience it. Because if you don't know it, how would you ever know that's something you might be interested in? So there's a lot of depth to this, and I could go on and on for hours about the assessments that we're looking into, how we're using to get people as they're looking for what's next, whether they be 16, 10, or frankly 30, to find something that really aligns with them and has meaning. Because we want to start our mission is really around two things. This idea of quiet quitting that you're hearing, right? Quiet quitting is a lack of engagement, and people are just not, they're not aligning their values to what they're doing. So, and by the way, engagement, is pretty close to an all-time low here in the United States at this point. That's number one. But the other thing too is people being able to find meaning in their work, right? And feeling like there's opportunities for them, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background, no matter what their skill set is. That's a pretty broad brush we're painting, but we believe if people can see these different opportunities, they will find their place, right? Whether it's, and David, I'll use you because you're right there and I can see you, Carly Mellon. When you think about robotics, some kids might look at that and say, I don't know if engineering's for me, but I'm fascinated by robots. Well, guess what? Somebody is going to repair them. Somebody works with them. Somebody sells them. So no matter what it is, there's a way to engage them. And that's really what we're looking to do with our space outside of just the esports and the gaming of it. So that was
I saw you come off
here.
I saw you come off mute, David. Do you have a comment about that?
No, I was just prepared to comment if I needed to. So.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, so that's our approach here, and I don't want this to just be me showing you a bunch of stuff and telling you all about the great things that we do, at least in my mind. I think it's more about what I am interested in hearing from your end. What are you looking for? When you hear virtual and extended realities, how have you had experience with it? How does that fit in with what you're looking for? What problem can that solve for you?
So Peter, before we dive into the getting that feedback from the folks in the room, one of the things that attracted us to what Peter was doing in New York and Buffalo and Niagara and beyond, Toronto and elsewhere, was really this idea of being responsive to industry's needs, developing content in partnership with industry, curriculum that he had developed in partnership with industry that was extremely effective in its use and broad-based application to multiple types of manufacturing. But then also that there was this, quality of curriculum, hands-on training simulators and modules and units that were kind of custom made, and the virtual reality in the future and how that all blended together. So maybe if we can start there, Peter, just tell us a little bit of the backstory on, how did some of this come about there in New York, and some of the, feel free to name drop some of the companies you guys have been working
Yeah.
with, but, talk a little bit about those, the curriculum, but then also the physical training, units that were created, for lack of better terminology, equipment, this kind of stuff. And then, we'll get into the virtual reality as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and Scott, that's a really good reframe, because we tend to be attracted to shiny objects. I am. So when you think of virtual reality, you say, oh, look at the game, look at all the environment. It's great. But one of the things we found, and this axiom I believe is 100% true, is that, it's people that drives performance. It's technology that enables it. So that was that lesson learned, and how our company came about is we worked a lot in the automotive space early on. And so specifically working with Ford, General Motors, also worked with the manufacturing companies like Procter and Gamble. And we worked at Lowe's, and we worked at American Axle, and a lot of places such as like Wegmans and Kroger, big supermarket concerns, Publix, Albertsons. There's a lot, they do a lot of food manufacturing, and as we go through that, the food manufacturing, liquor manufacturing, in all of that, there were two things that always seemed to be a challenge. Number one, people interacting with the equipment, they didn't always understand the equipment. They kind of learned as they went for this. And then secondly, the actual hands-on experience was generally relegated to what we'll call an orientation or short-term onboarding. So when that happened, people learned well enough, or what most of the time happened was that either they stayed or they left. And I don't have to tell any of you what the top two reasons always are when someone leaves a job and they do an exit interview. It's generally one of two things. I didn't feel like I was trained or given enough support. And number two, I didn't like my manager. And by the way, those are generally part and parcel of the same thing. So we actually began working backwards from a structured on-the-job training process that we worked in conjunction with actually with General Motors and worked with Procter and Gamble to develop. So once that became really useful and we were able to implement that globally, we started to take a look at what are the things people needed in order to do the job well. So it's kind of a reverse of the once I know it, I can do it. It was once we figured out what they needed to do, we started to identify the no. And some of the no could be communicated verbally, or maybe in traditional classes, or even in some cases asynchronously. But the other thing, there were some things that were they were conceptually difficult. So we began by creating 3D models around it. And then the 3D models were very useful and very good instructionally to communicate critical issues around manufacturing. But once we saw what virtual reality could do, and now people could blend that in, actually see it, touch it, feel it, that became sort of our mission, and how we can see how that will be integrated in. We've been very fortunate to work with, we're doing a lot with the skilled trades around Medtronics and also industrial maintenance. We have a 5-phase program that we have simulators that's set up, so people can go through all 5 phases. Each phase is about 14 to 16 weeks. So once they're done with that, they can work in any industrial maintenance setting in any manufacturer, we believe, in the world, especially auto manufacturing. It's 1 day a week that they go through this, and the rest of the time they're actually working in the facility, so they're getting seasoned while they're learning. And that, for us, that's been a really great program. With we've had a 97% 3% attrition, and 97% of that 97%, everybody's got, we haven't found anybody who didn't find employment or escalated employment once they were finished. So, and that's right now, we're somewhere around 1,200, and our new class just started. So we have we're running 2 sessions. We're running two shifts a week now. So we're getting about, we'll have another 150 people this year. We believe we'll go through it.
So I love hearing that scalability and the volume of people. And, even, we'll get into it deeper in a few minutes, but it kind of alluding to the VR as kind of a thing that can hook and attract and provide some interest and provide some sense of accomplishment, or I can do this, or I want to pursue this kind of opportunities before they dig into the hardcore of the content. But Peter, do you have anything you can, I think you can screen share. Is there anything you can pull up about that curriculum, kind of what it includes and what those, you mentioned 5 different components of what those are? I think that would be beneficial for some of the folks on the call.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
Like CCAC already has mechatronics, but I think one of the things that we invited them into this call was to see how it overlapped or didn't overlap, or could feed to their program, or could be a next phase of their program, and how that, we don't want to recreate the wheel in the region. So,
Oh, yeah, I would have to, let me see if I can find that right here. I had, no, you know what I do have? Let's see. I would actually do the Power Up program here that I shared with you guys. So that's a good one. Let's find the Power Up program. See if I can share this with you in just a second. Yeah. I'm going to open it up and share with you here. And by the way, I've got no problem sharing this with you guys for this. So I'm going to right now share my screen.
So while he's pulling that up, let me also say that one of the things Peter and I talked a lot about and be thinking about as we're, going through this information, but also, as we get into questions and thinking about what do we do here, Peter and his organization are going to have a presence in Pittsburgh, through their esports venture in the Strip District. So there's opportunity for everything you're seeing here for him to bring that up here as well. But there's also a tremendous amount of flexibility that Peter has demonstrated and vocalized to us around, tailoring to what the needs are for our region, where there's gaps, where there's opportunities to partner and fill voids. So, as you're looking at this, just know, again, this is already stuff that's built, that's very easily replicatable and to bring here. But if you look at this and say, hey, there's components of this that are needed here, but not other components, or this is great that you have this foundational ability, but here's what we really need for the region. And it's none of that,
Right.
I think is at all things we're open to in this dialogue and conversation. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind and be noodling that as he's kind of going through this.
Right. Yeah. And we really, Scott and I have talked about this and really want to bring this simulator to the area so it can be not only, I think it's in support of other things that are happening, certainly this hands-on. We spent a lot of time in the last 15 years, John Napa from our group really worked hand in glove over the last 15 years with top people at Ford and GM. And this has been shaped by them to saying, this is the kind of program we want to create the people that we want. I can see this as not only how it is right now, and you see our first phase is up there for industrial electronics. We see the learning outcomes. I'll go through that with you as well. But it's also now we've been working very diligently at opportunities to move this to different industries. Right now, we are certainly looking at the semiconductor industry very closely because we see that as we think there's going to be a great need for that as well. And believe it or not, one of the areas that been reached out to us and we are focusing in on is in some of the, I know it's almost like a dirty word right now, but it's in the oil production business, oil rigs, that the fear is that if we do scale back up, that we don't have the people and they need to be able to move more quickly. So we're able to pretty quickly translate needs into this, and our equipment can be adjusted. Depends on obviously what it is. We might have to create some that are auxiliary, some we can actually build right in, or some it's just curriculum changes and the way it's presented to be able to do this. But like I said, each one of these phases, I'll show you the first 3. Each one of these phases is 1 day a week for 16 weeks. And after the first one, you can see it's going to give them electrical theory. We'll give them hands-on. They'll be actually work hands-on with the simulator. You can see right here, right? And they'll be able to go from not having any real experience, right? But an aptitude to the end to having their own oscilloscope, being able to be proficient to with digital voltmeters, their own oscilloscope, and other testing equipment, fundamentally moving them, for want of a better sort of illustration, in manufacturing from the production to the maintenance side of the equation here. So once they finish the first one, phases 1 and 2 are very, really go hand in glove. It's best, you want them to at least go through phases 1 and 2. By the way, this is great for high school kids or who are looking for maybe something during the summer. We really are, we're hoping for next summer that we're in Pittsburgh, we could create a lab situation where it's a bit of a camp for the kids to be able to do this. So we're working with our supply chain pretty diligently, see if we can't build another one of these fairly quickly. But, for those of you, you can see just really quickly up there, you can see what our phase 1, the competencies that what they'll be able to achieve, what the instrumentation we use, and some of our key focus areas there as well. And again, I am more than welcome, Scott. I'll actually drop this in just a minute. I'd be happy to share this with people. I share it with you guys. You guys have copies, and anybody who wants one, you let me know, and I'll make sure to email it to you as well. The second phase is industrial controls, as you can see here. Again, we say theory and practical review. The theory, we are working very hard right now in the theory and into some of the initial setup of practice to transfer this to a virtual space. So this can be done outside of, so people don't have to come in and don't need the manual or a book, that we're actually gonna work this so they can even do it. They can do it remotely as well for this. So that's going to take a bit of time for us to create, but it's in the works. You can see, and I'll scroll back down, and here's for transformers and application. You can see the competencies, and you can see what we're using in terms of instrumentation, the focus areas as well for that. Right. So now, once you get those two, they're generally, if a person's gone through these 2 phases, that's 32 weeks, 1 day a week, and they're working in an environment, by then they are ready to be completely transitioned into industrial maintenance for whatever area of focus they want. That's when we can start to distinguish and start to move to, like we said, advanced control system, motor controls, and then transformers and power systems. So it really depends on what their interest is and what they want for this as well.
And keep in mind, again, predominantly how Peter's been utilizing this in New York has been incumbent workers, existing already hired individuals that are going through this training. They're getting work release, so to speak, or they're getting, time while they're getting paid by their employer to go through training that once a week. And the rest of the time they're working in their jobs. So, again, that could certainly be a model for here, but it also could be, as we're talking about pre-employment, or in the high school scenario, we could really compress that time, if they're 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 2 days a week during the weekends, obviously that time frame changes a little bit. So
yeah.
Peter, what do you see as the prerequisites for this program?
Aptitude and desire. That's really it.
So not math or?
No, anything that people need would come in. We do have an assessment, but it's an excellent question, David, because one of the things that I've been talking about with our group is that if that stuff, especially if someone isn't already in a manufacturing environment, not an incumbent worker, we've got to have something that allows a bridge for them. So yes, of course, math, they would need some math communication skills, physical dexterity as well. For some people that might be an issue, but maybe not. We want to do some sort of a bridge program where people can start to get interested in it, see what they need in order to get to the first phase. But honestly, unless if they have a working relationship with math and like I said, desire to do so, and a bit of an aptitude, we can take them through that first phase. And we have gone through for people who've had no other experience of working in a manufacturing for production. Perfect example, the Destry in Rochester has been sending a lot of people through. And these are people, some of them English is their third language. And yeah, and once they get in and they start to see it, because it's pretty visual for them, after 16 weeks, they're functional.
So I just see some of these words like variable frequency drives, harmonics. I would imagine some of these words would just scare people at the beginning, and maybe so that I'm just about that general issue.
Yeah, David, that's a great point. This is written more for the audience. We're in this room, but this is really, people are interested in, most of the people who say yes to this program. There's really two things that we know. One is they've shown, because they're incumbent workers, the Ford, and especially even, like I said, with Destry, Barilla, the place I am right now is a medical print shop. They look at someone saying, this person is showing that they're a good employee, they show up on time, they can communicate well, they're motivated, and they offer them this. So yeah, with some of those words, you're right about that. That's not going to attract some people, but we'll make sure it is a simpler process than maybe I'm making it out to be with the language.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
What other questions do any of you have in regards to this curriculum? Again, just using this as kind of a base toward a conversation, and again, what they've successfully been using already. But any other questions about this?
I think Tim dropped a really good one in the chat, Scott.
Okay, cool. While I'm pulling that up, Sylvia, I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute if you're still with us. I'm just curious
Yes,
how this kind of stacks up to your mechatronics program, or how it kind of aligns, or is it very
It
similar?
aligns. It really aligns very well. The basic electricity, then the motors, and then getting into PLCs and controls. It's all what we do in our program: motor controls, transformers, power systems. It's all there.
So let me flip the question on you a little bit. It's all there, so it's already being taught, and it doesn't need to be taught in another setting, or it's all there?
No, I think it could definitely be taught in another setting. I think the simulation, the gaming, if that's involved, I think would definitely be of interest to both incumbents and more traditional college students.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's, Scott, I think that's your question. I always like to share this with every group, because when we come into, especially our interest in the Pittsburgh area, and for the last year, as we've been, Scott said, we're getting ready to launch in the Strip District. It's an esports and hospitality environment on Smallman. We're also looking at the Hazelwood area for maybe this in particular, to maybe set up and put our simulation right there as well for that. So that's a second location, and then start to really reach out. It's better to partner than to try to create, to wall in and try to just create your own space. We prefer to partner with others. So yeah, Sylvia, you've got that. It'll be great to say, this is the way these two connect. We're
Right.
always willing to make adjustments to curriculum, to time, to space, to make it work for everybody. The goal is to get as many people through this as possible.
Exactly.
And build up the bench.
Right.
And part of our, just transparency for the group, and, and again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, maybe before we started recording with David, was, there's been a lot of conversations between the ARM Institute and CMU and MFI and ourselves, and, how do we leverage the space in Mill 19, not only for the current workforce needs, but as we look to the future and what the future of the Hazelwood Green Complex is going to include. That could include our neighbors over Emotional, or it could include, the robotics center, or the Bioforge, or whatever else is in the works for the complex. But, how do we you know, at least for Catalyst, we currently have an office space and a couple of training rooms with no equipment. You know, so for our space, it's like, hey, we can send people all the way over to CCAC, or we can do, but the potential to have something like right next door to us or downstairs or somewhere in the building is like a tremendous opportunity to be able to, you know, leverage the expertise and connections, but then also use classroom space and then say, okay, we're going to go walk right next door now. And everything you just learned in theory, you're going to apply, and you're going to, you know, we're going to go touch and feel and engage with this, you know, real world equipment or VR or combination thereof. So that's what, you know, again, is churning in our heads, just for transparency and to share and you know, at the lens through which we're looking at some of this, if that's even a possibility, you know, it's intriguing to us, I guess.
So Scott, at MFI, we're definitely planning on building demonstrators that would let people have hands-on experiences. In fact, I just talked to Gary Fetter, and we're in the middle of designing such a thing right before this meeting.
How does that align to this, David? Like, how is it different stuff you were talking about, and is it similar to stuff in this? Do you see a compliment here? What's your initial reaction, I guess, to put you on the spot?
I think this material Peter's offering seems to be at a lower level in terms of maintenance and, for example, motor controls and electricity. What we're talking about is more logistical in terms of, we're talking about building an assembly and disassembly stations where robots can build things in small production. So you're making one or two of something at a time instead of lots of things. So it's more about interacting with the machines and maybe some robot programming, but not so much the what's inside the controller box point of view.
Cool.
More about the manufacturing, one layer up from this.
Good. Do those two complement each other, or are they separate?
Well, they complement and are separate.
Okay. It was just a question for my own brain to try to get it all straight in my own head. So
they might not be the same people. You know, like Peter mentioned this. There's the production side of the equation and the maintenance side. So in a way, he's talking. What I see here in his curriculum is more about the maintenance side, and what we're talking about is more on the production side, but very much from an advanced perspective. So using all the new technologies, virtual reality, extended reality, as Peter mentioned, with the ultimate aim of looking to make cost-effective small batch manufacturing.
So I mentioned it briefly in the chat, Peter, you know, to the question that Norton threw out, I'm sorry, about the EV industry and electronic vehicle industry, as well as autonomous, you know, in our region. My response was, of course, that you guys are going to be co-located in the same building as Aurora, and early conversations that started there. And as many people may know, again, for those that are seeing this recording and can't see the chat, that Pittsburgh Technical College, you know, recently had announced a program in partnership with Aurora for some of those electrical assembly and electrical, you know, technician repair kind of things on the cars, at least. So a little bit of a different twist, but any you know, you don't have to give any inside stories. Just, and I know it's early in your conversations, but if you want to reiterate anything on that, but then also if you want to comment to any of the comments that have been made so far.
Yeah, sure. I don't think I'm giving away the store here. You know, betraying any NDAs. We've now entered in through Toronto Dominion Bank, which is is working on transitioning ICE, internal combustion engine. They're looking for ways to translate that to the EV space. So we have begun a project with that, and we are talking to Aurora around not only just the actual physical, how would mechanics work on it, but also looking at how dealerships are going to be handling this, and the supply chain and logistics component around autonomous vehicles, and then what's going to be the different job titles and positions that are going to start to be available, and how do we start transitioning people now So that's what we've been working on in the last, God, just not even but 3 months now. We began those discussions around that. And with Aurora, it's going to be, we see, because of our extensive experience in logistics, transportation, and frankly, in the corporate space of being able to very quickly define the different job types and be able to get the what's and how to do it fast. Since we can do that, and we transitioned some of our technical stuff pretty quickly too. That's going to be we're very excited about that part that's coming up. And Pittsburgh's autonomous central right now. So we're glad to be in the same building as Aurora, that's for sure.
Well, and I think that's really exciting too, Peter, because, you know, a lot of us on the call are involved in those conversations or at the periphery of that or interested in that. And, you know, your vast experience you've had with GM and Ford and that combined with the autonomous here and stuff, I think is a very interesting, you've got a lot of foundation to springboard off of.
Yeah. It's, I will just share this. There are some, you know, in life, there's kind of, I always categorize every conversation I have. Is this a duh? Is it a or is it a wow? I expected a lot of does and a few ahas, but I got more than my share of wows about what this transition and as it comes, what this is really going to mean, and the ways it's going to sort of change that industry and the workforce. The workforce part of it is the part I was very surprised about what's happening for that. And the biggest one for me is, again, the reluctance of people to get into a car where they don't have a driver sitting there. That psychological barrier is pretty surprising. I don't know if you guys have thought about that. I was like, oh yeah, I guess it would be a little weird to get in and the car just drives itself.
That's why we're gonna have that. What was it, like the inflatable, like an airplane with the inflatable pilot? You know, it's just gonna be like the autopilot inflatable guy be sitting there.
Like a clown that thing. It's pretty funny. But yeah, it is very exciting. So yeah, thank you for that. And that's and I'll be happy to share more. Believe me, we're, you know, as we move through this, I'm sure you guys are gonna have a lot to offer. We don't have all the answers. So this is when, as we hit more, believe me, I'll be sharing everything that I'm allowed to share.
Any other questions or comments on this curriculum, or again, how they've implemented or done it with, you know, again, the volume of people, the you know, incumbent, as well as, you know, I guess, again, it's been mostly incumbent up there, but any questions about, you know, kind of what the success they've had or the challenges or anything like that they've had with kind of this core curriculum?
So I wanted to chime in on one point that's kind of additive to this, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So in my program at MFI, I'm very interested in having teams work on projects where the team members are at all different levels. So there might be a master's student, somebody from undergraduate CMU, somebody from CCAC, somebody from a machining program, all working together on a common project, because I view that as what industry actually, that's the workplace you're going to go into. So I want to train at that level where you've got that hybrid situation. So a lot of the people on this call are from those different slices, and I very much want to kind of integrate that together at MFI. And
that's great. Yeah.
Oh boy.
And I think, you know, at least I couldn't help, Peter, but make the jump in my mind to your esports side of the house, because they're team-based games where you have different people with different strengths and coming together to attack problems and solve problems, and the skill set there, and the kind of the generation that's grown up on integrated you know, web-based, you know, team-based game application stuff, I think is interesting.
Wow.
Parallel.
Yeah. You probably saw me sort of smiling and nodding as David was speaking there, because David, that's it. First of all, you've hit right at the heart of one of the things that over the last several years, that's been sort of in my organization, that's sort of my core competency. Things and Scott's right. We did a program the end of last year. I guess I could say the name, Ingram Micro, you guys are familiar with. Ingram Micro was trying to bring in all their tech, their sales force, their customers, all with different, let's call them different levels of expertise. And we did a Rocket League tournament with them. Rocket League, for those of you who don't know, is like a simple game to learn. It's soccer with cars, basically, or it could be hockey too. You could do either one, but you slam into a ball, it bounces all over the place. And we actually did that, and it was such an interesting and successful team building endeavor, because three things happened real quickly. One is people who thought, "Oh, I'm not a gamer," were the most competitive. They got engaged the fastest. Number one. Number two, we had hired coaches to come in, but you know what ended up happening is so many of the people who were on the call were being reverse mentored by their children to learn the game. And it was fascinating to watch them come in and said, "My son told me if I do this, I could ride up the side, and that's how you score a goal." That was incredible. And then at the end, more people at the end, you would think that they were like, okay, once we're knocked out of the region, we'll kind of hear about it. There was a higher level of people watching the games and wanting to saying, "You should have a loser's bracket so we could get back into it." But the team building at the end was pretty awesome. So David, that's pretty insightful. That's the kind of stuff that you can hybrid together. It's pretty cool.
So Peter, can you transition a little bit now back to what we kind of alluded to before and touched on a little bit, which was the VR component of that, and how does that integrate into this experiences? Where does it fit within the matrix of some of this currently, but also future state? And I don't know if you even want to share again, because there might be some different people on the call. I know Tim and a few others are new to the chat from last time we chatted. If you want to show anything like the sheet metal, program that you just did, that kind of gives an example of a day in the life, I think is how you work.
Sure thing. And virtual reality, again, that's the shiny object, and it is it's improving and becoming more useful every day. We have our own proprietary, work on our own equipment as well as our own software for this. And I'm just going to give you where I think it's going for all this. And one of the things we're hoping to do in the space in Pittsburgh, either in Smallman or if we're able to take the space in Hazelwood, is using VR in an open space to really, as we move away from the immersive Oculus style headsets to more open, so we get rid of some of the challenges of vertigo or disorientation. But it's also, again, David, to your point around team play, where now I can be in a different place in the country, even in the world, and I could still feel like I'm in the same space and interact with you on a piece of equipment, on something you're doing. So virtual reality can, I think, not only as far as a piece of equipment or an environment, but it's also bringing people together around coaching and safety issues. For example, we're doing something with Google where I'm heading there this weekend. They've got a bunch of different areas where they have, I'll just share with you, basically server farms in remote locations. And a lot of the areas, for security and safety reasons, only one person at a time is allowed in. So the question becomes, well, how are you getting people ready to do this? They've been obviously creating a separate training space to do that, bringing people in centrally, and then shipping them to the different places, especially in very rural places. And so what we're talking to them about is you can have that person in there by themselves with our extended reality. Basically, it's one unit that we're creating. And now their coach is standing right by them and saying, now you're going to see it here. You've done it virtually. Now you're going to do it here. I'm watching you do this. Look at this, do this. This is what you're seeing. Yes, I can see it too. What's next? And they can actually do that space. But here, to me, is the biggest caveat to the virtual reality. And it's surprising that it goes all the way back to the roots of instruction. Just because something is advanced and technical doesn't mean it automatically works for people. Sound instruction, being able to show people this is how you actually do an effective on-the-job type training versus just, I'm going to tell you what you do and just follow along with me. That has been the biggest area that we've had to overcome with some of these groups, where they just think, oh, I'm just going to kind of tell you what I'm doing, you do it, and you'll be able to follow along and you'll learn as you go. And they do, but getting that new instruction has been pretty important in accelerating the speed and time to competence that the results that we want to get for this. So if there's so much cool stuff going on, I'm going to go ahead and share another one with you here. Let me see which one we'll bring up here. Let's go with this one. I'm going to see which one, if this one will work next. Sometimes you never know. You think it takes a second to load. Well, because I'm not in my own network here, I'm somewhere else. I'm going to share right now. Let's see if this will. Can you see? You should be seeing something right now. Let's go ahead and there we go. Can you see that? See it?
Yep.
Oh, this is a new one. This is a day in the life of a construction welder. Is this one? And of course, come on, you. I even preloaded it, and we'll see if it's might take a second here. Sorry. There we go.
Tim, this is right up your alley.
And this is them. Yeah, this is actually not just a video. This is somebody doing this. This is a real work site that we took some creative liberties to it, but they're following a plan. They're being taught, and now they're actually going through and doing this. You're seeing some jump cuts too, so you wouldn't be bored. Step by step along the way. Ready. Once they can do it here, it transfers to the IRL or in real life. They've done it safely here, and now they'll be able to move into that space. So I also wanted to show you, because you guys never get to see this, Scott, right? Here's actually a little promotional piece we did, so you get a sense of how it works. This is heavy equipment operation. People are learning with backhoes. There's our actual team, by the way. Working on programs, that's our coding. And that's the welding.
Cool.
So yeah, I don't want this to turn into a commercial, but you see where we're going with this, right?
I like Tim I like how when he puts the helmet down, everything gets darker, and you're not seeing it, but it gives a little bit more of that reality of the experience that they're actually looking through the mask. I like it.
Yeah, and the reason I show you two things to see that these people actually exist. I've been talking, Scott and I have been talking. No, that's actually Harrison. That's Matt. Harrison's and Chris are head of development. They're I also want you to notice that I am significantly older than all of them as well. See, but it's amazing the creative force there, and our coaching mode, which is what we've been working on over the last 8 months. We're very excited to launch that. That's going to feel just like you're in the same space as someone. And it's really going to be great with multiple, where we can have teams, people actually working in teams, not like you see in the metaverse. I know they've got a lot of, oh, we're going to sit at a table together. This is going to be around a piece of equipment. Reason I like that too is, Scott, we may be able to do it while we're trying to build different locations and raise the money for the $750,000 or so it takes to build them. We can do them in some of our central location, have it right there, and just send kits out and people can do it and be able to experience it, even if they can't come all the way in.
So I'm going to circle back to the question Tim asked in the chat here in a second, but what other questions does the group have in general about, again, the manufacturing curriculum, what Peter could or couldn't do here, but also I guess I want to transition a little bit into what do you see as folks that are in this, and it kind of nods to Tim's question as far as you're in the ecosystem here in the region. What do you see as the biggest gaps? What do you see as the needs? Do you see a demand for and a need for new partners, new spaces, new training opportunities, leveraging some of the stuff Peter's already done or willing to do? And any thoughts on any of that anyone would like to share or ask questions about?
So Scott, from my perspective, because I know that in our work, we're always looking for new training providers and we're looking for people who have new capabilities. I think it's a really good opportunity for us to say, like, okay, this is what, David and MFI are doing over here. This is what Peter's doing over here, and figuring out where the common points are, but also where the differences are, so we can funnel people to different opportunities based on what's appropriate for their aptitudes and their goals.
Great. Other thoughts, questions? So Peter, kind of towards Tim's question, are you guys doing any work with any community-based organizations, especially smaller community organizations? How do they fit into the picture of this, if at all, because you guys are doing so much on the incumbent side? And how does a small a community-based organization demonstrate the business case of value to their corporate business sectors and I guess plug into this ecosystem and be a part of it? And feel free to chime in, Tim, if you want to follow up on that question or ask more specifics after Peter shares his insights a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, I'd be interested in, and I think I know where you're going with this, Tim, but I just wanted to make sure I understood, the spirit of the question before I launch into some thoughts we have about that.
Yeah, thanks for the second. So given that our programs in support of youth, our services to kids are free and no charge to the kids. So it puts the onus on us to identify other funding sources, which we luckily have really terrific partnerships. Some are more progressive than others, such as Catalyst Connection. But if you compare a funding source as an endowment, for an example, which is where I currently reside in my level of support, the corporate community and the business sector is a very conservative giving group, where if we want to make the case that we're creating a savings in workforce readiness to entry-level positions, how do we test that out and demonstrate that value in order to receive at least support in theory and in networking, let alone support in cash?
Okay. Yeah, that is, well, there's two parts to that I'll share. And first, sort of an answer, what Scott guided us towards is, we do work right now. We just began a partnership with Goodwill here in New York. Goodwill has something called the Good Skills Program. And it's an interesting program in that they give some of the workforce readiness components, and then we help them look for partners. That's what we're doing to say, and the space I'm in right now, that's actually why I'm here. Goodwill just They have these 9-day program. They'll bring people in for 9 days to work for 3 hours a day in this different environment and see if they like it. And if the skills and it's a place they like, they actually get hired. So we're able to get some Goodwill obviously has some grant money for that. The manufacturer here is also providing some money, and we're talking about sponsorship and talking to some other groups about sponsoring that. That's another way to get that. But it's very important for us. We have a not-for-profit arm now that we started as well, to be able to reach out into the community and do more than just, when you enter in a community, it's not all for profit. You know, we do want to make sure that we're being even-handed and looking to provide the opportunities, because there's a lot of jobs to fill right now. And we'd be always happy to look for ways to partner. It doesn't, the other thing I'll say is everything doesn't have to be a $250,000 VR component like you see there. Some of the stuff that we're creating, we're doing it so we could probably you could just show it as an example, like that's an example. And we could take that and kind of show people that and let them use it for much less. And we could generally get sponsorships for that. But the second piece is our technical capability may very well be just gamification or more virtual game for this, or even, as some of you saw in the last, taking a game that already exists like Rocket League, creating something around that so there can be learning around that as well. And that's a way to engage people in particular skills. And we are prepared to do that. And that is extremely cost effective, meaning Rocket League is free. We have a Discord server. You don't have to do anything with that. And it's just basically setting up and, getting everything organized. So that's the kind of fun stuff that we can do to help you build a business case. And then we have our team our lawyers are in Cleveland, and they are very good at helping to create the business case for this. And if it's a good thing, we'll get behind it and support it. Absolutely.
But Tim, that's a great point too. And I think, something that David Ray from our team and I will talk more about around, not only yourselves, but we have, several other small community-based organizations that are doing great work. And, how can we provide the tools to help you with that business case, but also better, we're working a lot towards educating and informing our employers about it, being an employer of choice and what does that mean, but also, they've got to be thinking differently than they did even pre-pandemic, let alone, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years ago, where some of the mentality is stuck. And again, that ROI on, okay, maybe you have to give $1,000 or $1,500 transportational bonus to somebody to help them to get to work for the first month, until they can afford with their first paycheck to get a car. Maybe you've never done that before, but maybe now you have to. Maybe, there's a company in McKees Rocks, for example, that's really been helping their employees with first-time home ownership, and have really stepped up because they know it's the best thing, not only for those employees, but also for their community at large. And if they have more homeowners in their community, it strengthens the whole community, which makes their employee base, but also where they have their operations, a stronger, safer, more vibrant, environment. So, looking long-term versus that short-term, I need somebody now, but I'm not willing to pay for it, or whatever the, kind of thought process is, making that investment. So I think there's some work that we can not only brainstorm together on that, but also about how do we, in that bigger conversation around employer of choice and recruiting differently. And, what is that, what's the cost to you? There's already some tools that exist around the cost of a vacant position. And, by not having that position filled over X number of months, if you would have made the small investment instead over here, it would have been a 5X difference in cost, versus just the position sitting there empty. And the ripple effect and ramifications and stress on the other employees and other people who leave as a result of it, and the whole ripple effect that happens, right? So I'll definitely be talking to Dave and circle back with you about that, Tim.
Yeah, it's yeah.
We're just over an hour, so I want to be mindful of folks' times. I know some folks had to jump off already, but again, we hope this is an introduction to a conversation and a dialogue. this isn't going to be the end all be all, but, I am trying to give, Peter some sense of, is there an appetite for some of this? Is there a desire to have these kind of conversations? Is there a path forward to considering, opening or building out any sort of training space / VR space / replication of, these hands-on modules kind of facility, whether it's in Hazelwood or if it's, elsewhere in the region. And along the way, of course, introducing them as someone new to Pittsburgh to all of the wonderful folks on this call. So he is getting to know the ecosystem, but also getting to know the key players that are doing great work in this space. And at least folks are like, oh, yeah, we have this, I just thought this creative connection to how we could leverage esports, and Peter's doing that down the strip and we need to chat. So we're, on the same page with stuff or whatever it happens to be. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So
And
again, I hope
that's
this is a continued dialogue and conversation, and feel free to reach out. You have in the invite, Peter was included in that, so you can grab his email from there. I'll make sure that you all have his contact information, the information he shared in the presentation today. Of course, if you want to share this conversation with others at your organizations, we'll make available the link to this recording once we get it up. We'll throw it up on our YouTube channel. But any additional questions or thoughts anyone has before we conclude for the day? Any initial reactions as far as those that are still left is this everything you've been hearing today, does it align to our needs? Does it something that you think is helps to fill some voids, helps us to continue to do better at all this activity in our region?
I think it will help us to do better. It might engage people who might not be as interested. Some younger people especially, I think, would really enjoy the simulation.
I also agree, Scott. I was actually at a educators conference today, and one of the dilemmas that came up from admin and educators in the high school realm was that young people have a really hard time, not just access to other opportunities, not counting four-year college, but visualizing what those opportunities look like, where if we had the tools to show a variety of pathways to young people, it just takes them a step closer to, not to continue using the word visualize their future, but it puts them in a place to understand what opportunities look like. So I think a virtual lab would be received extremely well within our community. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say this follows what Peter's been saying, but I think the virtual reality step is really just the first step, and once you open it up into more augmented reality, extended reality, Peter's idea of a coach, that's where the real benefit comes. It's just, if it's just watching videos or three-dimensional models move through things, I'm not all thrilled. There is, if you don't know how to do something, looking up on YouTube and seeing how to do it, yeah, that's useful. It's very segmented. It's very kind of a piecemeal approach. But if you have a coach leaning over your shoulder, and by the way, that coach could be artificial intelligence. It doesn't have to be a human. And that's one of my big research interests, is to automate the coaching function. But that's the future. And I think that's something that's going to have a big impact across all these different skill levels.
Great. Thank you so much thanks for your thoughts, and also for joining us.
Yes, thank you all. I'm looking forward. Again, we're about partnering. We're coming in here, as Scott said, thanks to Catalyst and and Nate, and I know Hannah just left. So just been really gracious and open. Pittsburgh's been good to us. We're hoping that we can return the favor.
Well, again, feel free to reach out if you have any direct to Peter, or if you have additional questions or thoughts or anything that I think collectively for the group that we can think about. We're happy to convene again any future conversations or dialogue around this topic and with Peter, or again, even as other ways or shapes or forms, or If you yourselves want to pull a convening together and lead a conversation like this, we'd be happy to, again, promote and get the word out. And I will tell you guys that I'm going to put a quick little commercial in here before we sign off. So mark your calendars. We just officially locked in the date for our manufacturing workforce conference. We had it last year for the very first time, and we are going to be doing it again this year. So the date will be May the 24th. It'll be at St. Vincent College and in the Mr. Rogers Center. I know that seems like really far away, but it's really not. And we also have a lot of opportunities for guest speakers and for presenters during the day and sponsors and things like that. So I'm sure many of you will definitely be hearing from us around workforce, and I'm sure David MFI will have a role in the day in some capacity to be one of our presenters. So stay tuned for more information about all of that as we start going full bore into our planning phase now and getting all the pieces in line. But wanted to at least throw the date out to you and more information to come. So again, thanks everybody. Have an awesome day. Thanks again, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
Bye-bye.
we'll chat again soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.